Unless there's something else, Dr. Melton will move on. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is, and I've gotten the numbers all out of whack there, but the proposed revisions to the 2020-2021 calendar. That's Exhibit A. I'm going to ask Ms. Price if you can. Do you have that? You don't have that. Okay. So, Dr. Melton, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Cates. The board, of course, has approved a calendar previously for the academic year of 2021. Tonight, we bring forth to you a revised calendar. The difference that you see in this, besides the delayed calendar start of the date, you also see the insertion of Ms. Hammond's question earlier of the leap days. So those dates are in yellow. Our previous calendar, of course, was not inclusive of those, but based upon feedback from the committees that we had at work, the advisories, and also from principals, we felt like it was appropriate to insert the leap days to allow our teachers to get their classrooms set up so that they could be prepared for the physical environment, but also the curriculum and the expectations of that operation. So you'll see a division of sorts of our teachers coming back for 6 days and then a pause for leap, and then resuming with our students on Tuesday, September the 8th. Of leap, of course, is through our 8th grade for those that, as Mr. Giuliano described earlier, that would be per invitation of those students for identified reasons. And of course, it's voluntary for our faculty to be involved with that opportunity from August the 31st through Friday, September the 4th. So we'd like to take the recommendation to bring forth to you all consideration to revise the calendar so that we can adjust the work that we have that's appropriate. We felt it was important for our faculty and staff to have the opportunity to get back, to get the room set up, to be trained, and then give a pause before we had all students, or the students that choose to be on site for the traditional model, for them to have a chance to be prepared for success.
Dr. Melton, I've put that up from my device so that
Thank you.
that agenda is, or that calendar is on screen for the board. You can see it on your device in front of you there. Are there questions for Dr. Melton regarding the calendar? Is there a motion to, I kind of got ahead of myself there, I apologize, I was multitasking trying to get that up so
Mr.
that...
Cates, Mr. Cates.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, Mr. Gant, I can't see you because I put the calendar up, so Mr. Gant.
I could see you till you put this calendar up, but I'm enjoying seeing all of it. Are you ready for questions, or you need a motion?
I need to get a motion to approve in a second.
All right, get a motion if you will, and then I do have my hand up for questions. Thank you.
Mr. Gant, are you making the motion to approve this item?
I'd be glad to. I make a motion that we approve the amended calendar for 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Hutchinson, are there any questions for Dr. Melton?
Mr. Cates.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gant.
Mr. Cates, Dr. Melton, I know that I'd like to ask a couple of questions, but I'm wondering if the calendar itself, since it'll actually end with the 18th of June. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. With the ending the 18th of June, which is probably a historic date, longest ever that am I aware, will all the end of year, like exams and things that usually happen in May, happen later in the year and be adjusted to reflect that end date? As we all know, we want the end of the year to be as productive as it can possibly be. And I would hope that that would be part of this whole calendar adjustment. You probably hadn't had time to get to that yet. And I have another question in a minute about the beginning of the calendar year, but if you could address that, then I'd like to follow up.
Mr. Gant, we have drafted. Director of Secondary Education, Mr. Presley, is online. He and Mr. Giuliano, along with our accountability staff, have got drafts, but of course, we were awaiting the will of the board before we executed any plans. Those exams within our Our influence, such as middle school and high school exams that are not AP-oriented or IB-oriented, we would certainly adjust to make sure that exam schedules are aligned with School District 5 calendar. For those that are outside of School District 5 protocols, such as advanced placement classes, exams, and IB exams, those, of course, do not have our influence, so we would have to honor the calendar as set forth by those testing agencies. But those
Right.
within our influence, yes, sir, we would adjust to make sure we align with our revised
Right.
calendar.
And I guess a second part of that question is graduation for all of our high schools. Obviously, if we're going to change the exams that we have control of, I would think that we'd have to change the graduation dates. Is that something we're also considering?
Yes, sir, Ms. Goggins and her team work with, whether it's the Colonial Life Arena or our own graduations, and that's a whole new ball of wax, Mr. Gant, that we have not prepared for. So we would adjust graduation accordingly. Because the Colonial Life Arena has not opened up to resume those conversations, we have not
Right.
reached out to them to find out scheduling if that's the route that we go. But we would certainly adjust graduation to align with our academic calendar.
And Mr. Cates, if I could ask the other first front end part of this calendar question,
Yes, sir.
and that is the date of the 8th to start. I assume that was to give District 5 as much time as possible to plan and try to get everything in place and comply with the governor's request to open on the 8th. And in light of that, I had two different teachers ask me about those beginning of year assessments that everyone has to do. And I think this year will be even more critical because we've had this time out on an emergency plan with COVID going on since March. But we'll still be planning. I know those assessments will have to take place to see where every student is, but was there a particular reason? I guess the first part of that is the 8th was chosen to give the time, I'm assuming, but I try not to assume too much. And then those so valuable assessments, I feel sure that encouragement to have those assessments, whatever grade level, 2nd grade, 5th grade, 10th grade, will still go on to assess where our students are and what we have to do to get them back to where they need to be to progress in the next grade level. Can you address that a little bit?
Yes, sir. There are a variety of assessments. So those that are required by the State Department, we would look to them for any adjustments that they may make. Of course, it was a governor's recommendation that schools resume after Labor Day. So we would have to adjust with whatever the department expectations were. As far as assessments of School District 5, that will be adjusted within our influence, but there are some that we have to adhere to the number of days that we have to offer assessments with, which will be defined by the State Department of Education. So we have two layers of assessments. That within our influence, we would certainly change, but those that are defined by the department, we would work through accountability and instruction through their leadership at the state level to see where there may be some flexibility for adjustment, and knowing that other districts are looking to revise calendars too.
Okay.
Are there other questions? Just as a point of clarification, and Dr. Mountain, you may have said this, I know you talked about it with the reentry plan. I believe this was shared with principals, parent advisory cabinet, and faculty advisory. So there are a lot of folks involved in giving you feedback on the calendar, and I know that you can't send it out to everybody, but you have some great representative groups that were able to give you feedback on this calendar. Are there any other questions? If not, the motion is that we approve
Mr.
the.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I had one more follow-up. I just wanted to not give three questions, but and this would be for Dr. Melton, but I did notice that there were 3 teacher work days, and I was just looking at ways that this calendar wouldn't end on the 18th of June next year. And I guess in my heart, am I thinking that somebody or the legislature, or we're thinking they're going to forgive days? You don't even have to answer that. But I did notice there were 3 teacher work days, and then I also looked at the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which has sort of become one of our traditional Thanksgiving breaks, but that would save 4 days and move this calendar back significantly. Was there any thought, or is there any way to do virtual professional development and still be able to credit those days back? I don't know if we're doing a lot virtual these days, and it would seem that we could do virtual professional development at some point. And I know we do.
I
So I'll
think,
stop with that.
okay, make sure I understand your question, Mr. Gant. First, as a point of clarity for reference for everyone, there is no wave of requiring 180 days for students and 190 days for our continuing contract teachers. That is consistent. So I'd like to make sure that's on record for everyone to understand. As far as the number of days, we actually had 3 options that we presented to Parents Cabinet, to principals, and also to faculty advisory. It was loud and clear from our educational staff that breaks are needed to be throughout the academic year, for them to have a chance to refresh, for them to have the mental break of things, but also for the professional development. They were very clear if we front-loaded it that they could not have the chance to reflect and apply skills and then have the chance to revisit. So that's part of the beauty of our professional development. It is over the course of time to check in with our staff to see how they're applying skills and where they are and what kind of needs they may have for the next portion of the year. As far as whether it's virtual or on-site, that has not necessarily been announced by instruction. That too could be dynamic and changing, that if we are in a complete virtual operation that we may need to have folks. If we were to pull that slide back up, and I'm not asking for it to be pulled up, but we wanted to look towards small group professional development, but also virtual professional development for those that are in 5. We've heard from our teachers that some thrive better in small groups of physical interaction in a room of shared space versus having a virtual space when they learn together. So we felt it was important to offer choice. I think when you review that slide one more time, you see the instruction has captured teacher choice, teacher voice is very important. And we felt like one size would not fit all, just like it doesn't for students. So, Mr. Gann, I'm not sure if that responds to your question, but guide me if I missed a point that you'd like for me to clarify.
No, I think you did. I could not hear part of that, but I think you did. And I respect the fact about professional development. It was just a thought. And I know next June, we'll probably be getting lots of folks giving us a lot of ideas about that June 18th closing date. But it is what it is.
Then it would be difficult to remove those professional development days. The students would have such a long haul there, especially with spring break being in April. I can see where, especially your parent advisory groups probably wanted to have a couple of breaks in there. Were there any other questions concerning the calendar?
I had a quick one. Is that the same amount of Christmas days that we normally have? I mean, the calendar being moved back didn't really change the number of days we get for Christmas or for spring break, did it, Dr. Melton?
Winter break always changes depending on where it falls on the calendar. Ms. Goggins and Mr. Holden worked on this. Ms. Goggins, I did not count the previous calendar, but it's consistent with the average that we typically have of approximately 2 weeks. There have been some years we may have had more than 2 weeks,
Yeah.
but winter break is fairly consistent. And then if you look at spring break, we did remove that Friday before. We had tried to insert that, but because we were required by law to have the number of professional development days and work days for teachers, and of course 180 days for students, we removed that Friday, which would have been the 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if it was the 2nd or if it was the Monday, the 12th. I don't have that with me, unfortunately. But we did, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Goggins, reduce spring break by 1 day. Is that true? Okay, so we did reduce it from a 6-day a week to a 5-day week rather than having an additional day off.
Thank you.
Are there other questions concerning the calendar? If not, the motion was made to adopt this amended calendar. It was presented in your board packet. We had that second. As many as favor the adoption of this amended calendar, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. So we will have the calendar adopted, and I know folks will be anxious to receive that. That brings us to our final action item, which is the motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move
Yes,
that we
ma'am.
adjourn.
Ms. Hammond moved we adjourn. Mr. Lovelace, was that a second? Yes. I thought so. As many as favor the motion to adjourn, raise your hand. Thank you. Our next board meeting will be on August the 10th, and we will announce a location prior to that meeting. Thank you for your support tonight and for your patience. Hopefully you had a lot of your questions answered, and have a good evening.